Is the modern way of dating healthy? Literally every single girl that I've told this to hated the strategy. I'm gonna tell you this.
If you ask any of my friends, I'm the last person who'd use a dating app. Out of all my friends who downloaded the app, I'm the one who found someone.
The one thing for me was, first of all, she actually responded. I have had a couple matches. She actually responded to me. And second of all, I think she liked.
I like your favorite Bible verse.
Yeah, I think it was I believe it was Proverbs 12:18. Reckless words pierce like a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. I think especially within the Christian sphere, there's a lot of good talk and boundaries, especially on the physical side of things. A lot of times we don't really think about the emotional side of things as well. You know, we use that verse to say like, don't be mean. I'm sure that's part of it too, but there's also this instance of like, you know, don't awaken love, you know, until it pleases to, like, you know, Song of Solomon, especially in the dating sphere, there are instances where we kind of, you know, get emotionally attached to people. And so I thought that was a really good click for us. And so, yeah, we just started talking and that's the courage.
I think we were talking on the app for about 2 or 3 days, and then he asked for my number.
Roughly.
And then we started texting. I only had the app for like a week or two. Yeah. And I remember I was like, you know what? If this guy Sam doesn't respond to me, I'm deleting the app. And by God's grace, he responded that night.
Plans, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I will say it's kind of like a little bit different too, as because like I like grew up in like a very specific subculture of the church, which like the Korean church. She grew up very much in the subculture of like the Filipino church. To a certain extent, I was like in a very much of a bubble where, you know, obviously we preach the gospel, but there's inadvertently like a cultural way of doing church as well that kind of leaks in. And same thing with her, there's like a very cultural way that's very different from me that I'm not used to, that kind of leaks into it. And so I thought it would be kind of cool and good in a way to kind of, you know, get out of that bubble in a lot of ways. That was kind of something we were talking about initially when we were dating as well. You know, this is a strategy that I don't know if literally every single girl that I've told this to hated the strategy, but I'm going to tell you this. It worked for me and for Jen. The first kind of really serious conversation we had after we got out of the app was like, okay, we are going to talk about the most scandalous and the most like hard topics that, you know, anyone can talk about.
It's like things in that you talk about with your like so-called boyfriend girlfriend like 5 months or like 7 months into the relationship. We're gonna skip the what's your favorite color, what's your favorite food, what's your favorite place. Let's get
into like gay marriage. Like what do you think about gay marriage? Like what do you think about Black Lives Matter? Because like the protests were happening at the time. Like what do you think of that? What do you mean that's theologically? Like you know, what do you think in regards to like abortion? All of like literally all of the nitty-gritty stuff, right?
And maybe like non-negotiables too, that you find out where you know a lot of people usually break up around like 6 months or a year because of these issues and the disagreements. So we kind of wanted to like, you know what, let's talk about these things first, and I agreed with that. With that decision.
Thankfully, we were able to pretty much land on a lot of that, and from then on, I was just like, okay, I'm good. Let's be serious about this now, and let's make a game plan, because we had to, because we were long distance. We had to make a game plan on how we're gonna go forward with it. So
I'll say this as a background. I was in a 5-year relationship. After that, I was single for about 4 years. I was perfectly happy being single. I had like the best relationship with God. I think I really thrive in my single years. And for Sam to, you know, come into my life, he really had to love God for me to even let him in my life. And so I think that was one thing that stand out to me, that God was number one in his life, I would be second. I love that. Like I never wanted to be someone's priority before God. And so I think that through his actions, the way he was intentional with asking those questions, that just made him different from a lot of the other guys that were around me. One thing that was also very evident that he loved God is he would be adamant on praying every morning and every night. We would take turns. I'm more of a morning person, so I would call him for like 6:30 a.m. in the morning and pray. And then he was more of a night owl, so he would pray at night. So we kind of like met in the middle with that. And we also did like Bible studies like weekly, or we read like books. What was the first book we read?
We read a book by Jefferson Bethke, who's a Christian author. Who did he had a book called Love That Lasts. So we did that.
Yeah, so we had like a mini book club too. So I think not only the conversations were intentional, but the things that we were doing together as a couple was also intentional because all part of a bigger picture. Every time I would tell my friends about him, they'd be like, whoa, I've never met a guy like that. And I think that was very, very different. He's kind of like...
Yeah, a lot of her friends apparently thought I was like mega super like conservative. And I was like, I wouldn't consider myself that, but okay. Just call myself a follower of Jesus. But
yeah, but then I was like, he's a true man of God. That's how they are. Yeah.
We had to keep it romantic at some point, we can't keep doing it everything intentional. It's gonna be boring. So I did write her a lot of poetry and
sent me playlists.
Yeah, like it's not like the, I don't know, it's like the 90s they would do like cassette tape playlists. It's not that weird, but like we would send each other like playlists and we would like, okay, listen to this. And so she would like listen to the playlist that I gave. We had to be like creative with like how we pursued each other. So
yeah, it was never like sought out for like that before. So definitely stood out from all the other.
Is the modern way of dating healthy? How many, like, so you asked how many sexual partners? Are you really happy? Like there is a good way to actually take part in this dialogue. Technology will never solve, your relationship with God. I think it will magnify whatever you have in your heart. It's kind of like money. The reason though, for me, I still think dating apps is so good and such a great way of meeting people is because it allows almost like a Mars Hill situation, right? Where Paul goes to Mars Hill and it's a pagan nation, but he uses the specific, public grounds of debate to not shun them and to shame these pagan philosophers in Athens and Greece, but to actually use that to dialogue and to actually initiate and to pray for the city and to be like, hey, like as a Christian, let's talk about this, let's talk about what it means to be dating. Yeah, people should use dating apps. I mean, if
it's a tool.
Yeah, it's a tool. If the only people that are using dating apps are, non-Christians, then Christians don't really have a voice in that sphere, which means that Christians will not be able to shape it, which means technology is only going to be used for the sake of the world, which is, kind of a shame. So